Hello everyone, my name is Nick Infernus, and welcome back to another comic book review. In this video, we're ending off the DC Extended Universe, not with a bang, but with an admittedly enjoyable whimper. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now, I heard someone say that in terms of the release schedule, they should have had this and the Flash switch places. Me personally, I think they should have done this, then Flash, then Blue Beetle, because that could have at least cleared up some of the confusion involving, Zolo Maranduena and Jaime Reyes being first DCU hero, according to James Gunn. But I definitely think that this should have come before the Flash, because the Flash, say what you want about it, it's at least conceptually a better closing for this universe than a standalone Aquaman movie. And that's not to say this movie is bad or anything. It's good. It's not a good ending for the universe, which, I mean, who was really expecting it to be? So, starting with what I like, as usual, probably the biggest positive that the movie has going for it is the chemistry between Arthur and Orm, the Aquaman and the Ocean Master. Now, what I like about them is that they have this almost buddy cop dynamic where Arthur is, the jokey guy, whereas Orm is the straight man. One's taking things completely seriously. The other is still taking things seriously, but, is trying to, lighten the mood, reconnect. He's at least more positive than the other guy is. And they work off of each other incredibly well. But I also really appreciate how they're able to put aside their differences in order to achieve a common goal. Since they both really care about the kingdom of Atlantis and obviously don't want to see it go under, despite whatever reservations they have about the other person, they're willing to put that aside in order to save their home. And at least for me, that added a little bit of heart to the movie. Just the relationship between two brothers who, were enemies at one point, but came together over a common goal. I wouldn't say it's all that powerful or even, deep or anything, but it does give the movie a little bit of emotion to it. Especially because these are two characters that I would say I like a good bit. I've never really had that much attachment to either of these guys, but, for characters in this universe, they've always been, fairly enjoyable to watch, especially with all the Shakespearean undertones in the first movie. And speaking of character, I'd say that Orm definitely got an upgrade here, but he wasn't the only character from the first movie to get an upgrade. Black Manta got a major boost. Part of that is because of the Black Trident, where Gordax is manipulating him into killing Aquaman in any way he can to get power, or awakening him so he can have the power to kill Aquaman, because, man, this guy knows how to hold a serious grudge. But also, and because of that, he's much more ruthless than he was in the first movie. I think it might be safe to say that this is the first truly evil villain that we've had since High Evolutionary. Like, the first one where there's no debating it. Like, we could probably debate about Victoria Cord. I personally think she's definitely evil, and probably one of the only pure evil villains they put out this year, or in 2023, because it's 2024 and I'm recording this. But Black Manta is an absolute force. He's ruthless, he's deranged, he's intimidating, he's actually kind of scary. And a lot of what I like about these characters is the actors. The actors all did a great job, whether it be Jason Momoa, Patrick Wilson, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Took me forever to memorize that. But I'll also toss in Nicole Kidman, and yes, I'll give some props to Amber Heard. I don't like her at all, but can't deny a good performance when I see one. Since we were just talking about the Black Trident, I will say that the lore surrounding this is interesting, how it was created with this dark magic that ended up corrupting the entire titular Lost Kingdom and Gordax and his people with it. And it does kind of create for a more horrific backstory and atmosphere for this otherwise very lighthearted movie. And of course, this is a James Wan Aquaman movie, so of course the action is very engaging where he lets you see everything going on. Very, very entertaining to watch. Now, unfortunately, with all that praise comes a lot of critiques. And I'd say my biggest issue with this movie is that it kind of takes some stuff away from what I liked about the first one. What I liked about the first one, at least one of my biggest positives about it, is that it was a very colorful movie. It was very pleasing for the eyes, basically the definition of eye candy with how colorful with how colorful Atlantis was and the hair physics underwater. Very pleasing to the eyes. Here we don't get to spend nearly as much time in Atlantis or underwater, so there's not really as much of a visual spectacle. Like most of the time they're on land on this island where Black Manta's sort of just set up shop to smelt down all this orichalcum. I forgot that's what the dark magic stuff was called. So yeah, it's just the two brothers on the island or at Arthur's dad's lighthouse. So we don't really get as much color or as much admittedly satisfying hair physics. Like really the water physics in general was one high point of the visuals in the first movie. There's still a good bit of that, but even in Atlantis, the colors don't seem to be nearly as rich. So at least for me, that kind of takes away from the spectacle that the first Aquaman delivered. Like this movie still looks really good. It's just not as much of an eye pleaser. Another thing is that the way they defeat Gordax is very underwhelming. If anything, the climax is more solidifying the amends that Arthur and Orm are making with each other. It's more about that than stopping the villain. But again, I kind of would have liked to see Gordax take the Black Trident and then see a Trident duel between him and Arthur. Like admit it, even if you didn't like the movie, you would have wanted to see you'd want to see that. But instead, all it really takes is just one throw from the Trident and done. And I know that's kind of big spoilers, but this movie isn't doing well anyways, so doesn't matter. The humor is also a bit of a downgrade. There wasn't really a lot of the wit that made me laugh. I didn't really care much for the humor in the first movie anyways, but it wasn't a flaw. Here it's, more lowbrow with the Aqua Baby and all the pee jokes they make. Even when the baby's not in the picture, there's a pee joke. And generally speaking, the thing that made the first Aquaman so appealing was just how accessible it was to all audiences. That's probably the reason why it made $1 million, because there was something, not $1 million, $1 billion, something in there for everyone. Here, for the most part, the humor in the first act is stuff that really only little kids are going to get enjoyment out of, which, more power to them, but that's not the kind of thing I'd find myself laughing at. And the last thing that I'll say here is that I'm kind of tired of these studios putting modern politics in these escapist movies. I come here to watch a fun Aquaman movie, not a cautionary tale about climate change. Yeah, that's really a minor thing, but it is something that gets on my nerves. So overall, I would say this is a good movie. It's not a good way to end the DCEU, that's for sure, but for what it is, I came for an Aquaman movie, and even if not everything I liked about the first movie is here, I did still get an Aquaman movie. I liked the dynamic between the two brothers. Black Manta was a menacing villain, the lore was interesting, and the action was still just as entertaining as ever. Unfortunately, a lot of that is weighed down by just a general lack of visual appeal, an underwhelming defeat for the villain, much more lowbrow humor, and I guess if you want to include the climate change stuff, you can, but again, that's a very minor thing. So overall, I'll go with a 3 for this one. Fuck. Yeah, I'll go with a 3 for this one. Yeah, I guess there's your little teaser for the next video. Yeah, just probably a low 3, but still a good movie. I'd still recommend seeing it at least once, but there's no real need to rush out to see it, especially because, it's just a standalone Aquaman movie. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for my review of Aquaman The Lost Kingdom. If you enjoyed, you know what to do. I'm not going to bore you with all the generic stuff. See you guys in the next video. Take care, and Godspeed.